Like bangers and they like this one.
Guys, that's right. This is coming on. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Markey, the first selectman here in Westport, and on behalf of the town of Westport, I'm happy to welcome, first of all, our Congressman Jim Himes and Senator Murphy to Chris Murphy has been a regular visitor to Westport, and we welcome him back as always. And I know, I believe the subject today is Middle East, which is a topic that unfortunately is always out there, and certainly none more so than this week and this month and this year. So again, welcome, both of you. We're always happy to have you here as our guests, and I know everyone here is anxious to hear what you have to say, and not so much what I have to say. So please go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for being here. This is a rare opportunity for Jim and I to share the stage. We normally do these town hall meetings on our own, but given the gravity of the situation in the Middle East, in particular in Iraq today, given both of our responsibilities as members of two committees in the House and the Senate that have jurisdiction over these matters. I'm a member of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. Jim, as you know, is a member of the Committee on Intelligence. We wanted to be here together to seek some input and some counsel from you to answer some of your questions about American policy in Iraq and also broadly throughout the region. I just want to maybe set the scene here, allow Jim to do the same, and then we will really spend the majority of time opening up for questions and comments from all of you. That's the real reason that we're here. But suffice it to say that we are at a turning point in the Middle East right now. In Iraq right now are the beginnings of what could be a full-scale regional proxy war that has been brewing and brimming for about a decade now between Shia and Sunni, with a lot of other ethnic groups in Iraq, the Kurds in particular, caught in between. And it matters to the United States. It matters because leaving vast stretches of the Middle East to Islamic extremists poses a danger to us. It could be a training ground and a breeding ground for organizations that want to attack the United States. Again, it matters to us because irrespective of whether you supported or opposed the war in Iraq, I was a vocal opponent of it, we bear some responsibility for what's happening there now. The U.S. invasion of Iraq was one of the major destabilizing factors that has led to the moment that we have today. And it matters because there are hundreds of thousands of people being killed there. And well, we're going to talk today about whether there's a true U.S. national security interest in the sectarian war in Iraq, and whether, frankly, there's anything the United States can do to stop it. It should be a matter of concern to Americans when there's that number of people being killed in any region of the world. So we wanted to just come here today to tell you a little bit about our early thinking and then to hear from you. Some people are not familiar with the landscape of the current crisis, so I just want to run through two very quick maps that hopefully you can see. This is the very sort of rough sectarian divide in Iraq. You've got the so-called Sunni Triangle in the western part of the country. You have the Shiite area in the south and the east, and then you've got the mostly Kurdish north. The Kurds' capital is Erbil, but their sort of cultural and center capital is Kirkuk. The second slide here shows you where ISIL has gained the most traction. Can you go to the second slide? So as you can see, ISIL has not only consolidated power in most of the Sunni area, but has extended control into substantial portions of the Kurdish area, in particular taking over Kirkuk. They now have advanced as far as only a handful of miles outside of Baghdad. And as you have heard in the news over the weekend, there's a new offensive being relaunched by the mostly Shiite government to try to take back Tikrit. We are overnight in Baghdad right now, and so there are conflicting reports as to how successful those efforts have become. But to suffice it to say, this situation is changing on an hour-by-hour basis, such that on the drive over here, President Obama just announced that he's sending 200 more military personnel, mainly to shore up American State Department personnel inside Baghdad. So I'm clear in my belief that there is a U.S. interest in the future of this growing sectarian war in the Middle East. But my thoughts on this, and I think as Jim will tell you his as well, are defined by my belief that there are serious limitations about what the United States can do to affect the situation on the ground. I frankly think that the worst thing the United States can do is to openly take sides in a sectarian war in Iraq. It was one of the reasons why I was one of the first Democrats, maybe the first Democrat in the Senate, to oppose the president's plan to militarily intervene in Syria, because I worry that we have not yet necessarily learned the limits of American military power in terms of trying to influence the politics of the Middle East, a place that we still don't quite understand to this day. And to show how confusing it is, this weekend the leaders of ISIL declared the new Islamic State, and that state does not recognize these borders. They will expand it as far as it goes, but for now that state essentially is the Sunni areas of Syria and Iraq. And to expose the potential weakness, I would argue grave weakness, of American policy in this region, right now our policy in a region that knows no borders is to align ourselves on the eastern side of the conflict with the Shiite government against the Sunni insurgency. And then on the western side of the conflict in Syria, we align ourselves with the Sunni insurgency against the Shiite autocrat, right? And as smart as you think the American military and State Department are, and I think there are some very capable, very smart, very dedicated people, trying to play both sides of a regional sectarian fight is likely impossible in the short run, the medium run, and the long run. And so I am urging severe caution when it comes to re-engaging in Iraq or upgrading our intervention in Syria. And before I turn it over to Jim, my one caution to the administration is that if the president is going to propose any new military action in Iraq, I think he has to hold himself to the same standard he held himself to in Syria. He has to come to the United States Congress for authorization. The old Iraq AUMF, the authorization for military force, is functionally obsolete at this point. That was an authorization for military force against Saddam Hussein. It does not give him the power to engage militarily against a brand new enemy in ISIL. And the 9/11 AUMF, which gave broad authority to chase al-Qaeda, isn't operative here either. Now, ISIL in a lot of ways is worse than al-Qaeda in terms of the tactics that they use and the damage they seek to do, but they are not technically an affiliate of al-Qaeda any longer, and the 9/11 authorization of military force specifically limits military action to those groups aligned with al-Qaeda. So if the president's going to do anything beyond just put military advisors on the ground, I think he has to come to Congress. And I think if he does that, he will be met with a very wary and skeptical American public of increased military intervention in the region. And I only lay the pros and cons out for you because I see both sides of this, I do. I see an American interest there, and then I struggle to understand how American military force can change the reality on the ground. And that's in part even given a preview as to where my prejudice lies on this question, that it's important for us to have this conversation. Jim and I have been close friends since we both started in the House together, Jim 2 years after I did, and I think we both rely on each other to try to sort through these complicated questions. That's why we're glad to do this together.